Was Bobby Mackey's Music World the most haunted nightclub in America? Welcome to Bobby Mackey's Music World, famously promoted in popular culture as the most haunted nightclub in America. Located in Wilder, Kentucky, this nightclub in honky-tonk is owned by country singer Bobby Mackey. But the real intrigue lies in the dark urban legends that surround this place, tales of hauntings, murders, and even suicides. Before Bobby Mackey's, the grounds had a much different purpose. Most of the urban legends behind Bobby Mackey's claim that the original site was home to a slaughterhouse. However, it is documented that in 1876, the site was home to the old 76 distillery in Finchtown. It was in operation for 40 years. In fact, the tunnel and wells on the property were built for the distillery to bring up water to make whiskey, and the infamous portal to hell well was actually covered by heavy machinery, and you couldn't actually get access to the well itself. Now, if you dive into the legends that have fueled Bobby Mackey's haunted reputation, one of the most chilling claims is that the site houses a gateway to hell, haunted by spirits including Pearl Bryan, a woman whose decapitated body was found just 2.5 miles away in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. The legend goes further, suggesting that Bryan's murderers, Scott Jackson and Alonzo Walling, alleged Satanists cursed the location and vowed to haunt it for eternity, and that her head was placed inside the well in the basement. As I mentioned earlier, this well was allegedly covered by heavy machinery from the distillery. Many investigations have failed to turn up any public records that confirm these stories. Research into property records, newspapers, and court files hasn't substantiated these chilling claims. There's no proven connection between Bobby Mackey's and the murder of Pearl Bryan. Science writer Sharon Hill points out that the nightclub is often hyped up with tales of murder, curses, and hauntings, but the current circulated legend has obviously enhanced and accrued additional details in the retelling over some 30 years. According to Hill, the supernatural claims and the so-called portal to hell are completely unsubstantiated. Despite the lack of evidence, these haunting rumors continue to thrive, fueled by books like Hell's Gate by Doug Hensley. Author Andrew Young suggests that these legends about Pearl Bryan might be a way for people to cope with the gruesome details of her death. However, the Campbell County Historical and Genealogical Society notes that the story of Pearl Bryan's murder is continually exploited, and it's highly unlikely that her ghost actually haunts Bobby Mackey's Music World. Scott Jackson and Alonzo Walling never confessed to the murder of Pearl Bryan, and it's been rumored that Scott Jackson actually took Pearl's head to the Cincinnati Dental College, where he was a student at the time, and knew the school had an incinerator they used to cremate cadavers, bodies used to practice dentistry on. After 40 years of operation, the distillery shut down once prohibition laws came into effect, and all but a few of the distillery building were eventually torn down. The property was then purchased by a man named John Pop. He built a 2-story building where he would live in the lower ground floor with his family and ran a small cafe called the Bluegrass Inn for the next 5 years, eventually choosing to leave after several unfortunate incidents. In the time he lived there with his family, there were several fires and break-ins on the property, once again leaving people to believe the land was cursed. John Pop sold the property to an entrepreneur named Buck Brady, and he opened a nightclub on the site called the Primrose Club in 1943, also referred to as Sin City of the South, where he was known to run illegal gambling and liquor for the rest of the decade, before getting shut down by the Cleveland Syndicate, who would then go on to take over the site and rename it the Latin Quarter. The newly branded Latin Quarter became a nightclub and casino under ownership of the mob for many years to come, eventually getting shut down in the 1950s. This is where the legend of Johanna is born. An eerie tale tells of a pregnant dancer named Johanna who allegedly poisoned her father and committed suicide in the 1940s after her father murdered her lover, Robert Randall, a singer at the club, by hanging him in the dressing room. The legend of Johanna has never been verified. No death certificate or ads for Johanna performing during this time have been found. In 1978, after a series of fatal shootings at the Rough and Tumble nightclub, the local authorities were forced to close the establishment. Later that same year, 1978, a young country singer named Bobby Mackey would go on to purchase the property. Despite the unsubstantiated claims, the countless and well-documented paranormal occurrences speak for themselves. Bobby Mackey's wife, Janet, experienced some very chilling phenomenon. She would often hear a mumbled female voice when her and Bobby were the only people on site, and would mention to Bobby how uneasy the building had made her feel and urged him not to buy the property. Bobby, being a skeptic and not believing in the paranormal, ignored his wife's claims. Carl Lawson, the club's first employee, worked as the handyman and lived in a small apartment right above Bobby Mackey's music world. Soon after moving in, he began experiencing strange and unsettling events. The jukebox would play music even when it wasn't plugged in, and Carl claimed to see a menacing figure behind the bar that no one else could see. He also said he spoke with Johanna, a spirit who would leave behind a strong scent of roses after each encounter. Many people thought Carl was just talking to himself and dismissed him as crazy. Bobby Mackey would get frustrated by Carl's ghost stories, worried that they might scare away customers. However, his disbelief was shaken when his wife, Janet, had a terrifying experience in the basement, making the supernatural claims harder to ignore. One day, the activity took a dark turn as Janet Mackey had been visiting her husband while she was heavily pregnant. She claimed a dark force pushed her down. After Janet's ghostly encounter, many of the staff began recounting their own strange experiences. It turned out that many of them had been keeping these events to themselves, afraid of being labeled as crazy, just like Carl. Reports of customers and staff being pushed by an unseen force and scratching them until they bled. The fear among everyone was palpable. Several employees reported seeing a headless woman, and paranormal researchers for years have always concluded that it must be the ghost of Pearl. These eerie encounters add to the legend of Scott, Jackson, and Alonzo Walling. Carl, who wasn't particularly religious, was advised to sprinkle holy water in the well, hoping to calm the spirits. He did this several times, but instead of bringing peace, it seemed to stir up the ghosts even more. Objects started flying off shelves, lights flickered on and off constantly, and employees were physically attacked with incidents of scratching and hair pulling. Carl would go on to experience the most shocking and intense paranormal activity ever recorded at Bobby Mackey's music world. While Carl was living in a small room upstairs, he claimed that the evil spirits were trying to take over his body. He would barricade himself inside his room and sleep with a loaded shotgun. In 1994, an exorcism was attempted. On Carl, it went for hours. Carl believed the exorcism worked. However, he would still feel the demonic presences around Bobby Mackey's whenever he visited up until his death in 2012. You can watch Carl Lawson's exorcism on YouTube. Many of his family and friends have made comments about the video stating that Carl's behavior was extremely out of character for him. Today, the atmosphere is much calmer, and the spirits are generally well behaved. Occasionally, someone might feel a gentle caress from an unseen hand or a playful poke in the side, nothing more than harmless gestures. However, the ghosts still have strong opinions about the music played at the club. If a band performs that they don't like, they'll start throwing things again, making sure the band gets the message to leave the stage. Given how old Bobby Mackey's music world is, there are lifetimes upon lifetimes of history there, and many paranormal encounters to be told, some of which were featured in numerous TV shows and documentaries over the years, including The Jerry Springer Show, Geraldo Rivera, Haunted Lives, True Ghost Stories, National Geographic channels, Is It Real? And the Discovery Channel's A Haunting. The 2008 premiere episode of Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel also covered Bobby Mackey's music world. The show revisited the nightclub in a 3-part web series called Return to Bobby Mackey's, and again in late 2010 on Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America. Syfy's Ghost Hunters, BuzzFeed, Unsolved, and an episode titled The Ghosts and Demons of Bobby Mackey's. Paranormal Lockdown covered the nightclub in Season 3, Episode 4 on Destination America and Portals to Hell. Soon, Nick and Tessa Groff will release a new documentary titled The Last Lockdown at Bobby Mackey's Music World. Bobby Mackey's Music World opened in 1978, where it remains a legendary venue until March 2024, when the nightclub temporarily closed. The owners announced plans to relocate temporarily to Florence while they rebuild the original site. To this day, Bobby Mackey's Music World remains a popular haunted location in America. Paranormal investigators travel from far and wide to experience some of the bar's terrifying history. So, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Is Bobby Mackey's Music World a portal to the paranormal, or just a place where stories have taken on a life of their own? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more creepy content, and ring the bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching.